3 true haunted office building horror stories. Hey everybody, I'm glad y'all stopped by. Most people think of office buildings as boring places, cubicles, meetings, coffee machines, fluorescent lights. But after everyone clocks out, those same buildings become strangely different. The phones stop ringing, the elevators keep moving. Lights switch on in empty offices, and if you're one of the few people still inside, you start noticing things you normally wouldn't. I went looking online for stories from people who claimed they experienced something they couldn't explain while working late. Tonight, I've picked 3 of the ones that stuck with me the most. Whether they're true or not, I'll let y'all decide. All right, let's get into the first one. This first story was posted by a janitor who worked in a 20-story office building in downtown Chicago. Here's what he had to say. I've worked overnight cleaning office buildings for almost 12 years. You get used to being alone. In fact, I usually preferred it. No employees asking questions, no meetings to work around, just me, a mop bucket, and 8 hours of quiet. The building I worked in had 20 floors. Most businesses cleared out by 6 in the evening. By midnight, the only people left were me, one security guard in the lobby, and occasionally someone from IT working late. Every floor looked almost identical. Gray carpet, glass conference rooms, rows of cubicles, family photos left on desks, computer monitors asleep. The only sounds were my vacuum, and the occasional ding from an elevator somewhere else in the building. One night, the property manager stopped me before my shift. There are 2 floors you don't have to clean anymore. I asked why. They've been vacant for years. He smiled. No point wasting your time. I shrugged. Less work sounded fine to me. Then he added something that struck me as odd. If one of those office phones rings, don't answer it. I laughed. He didn't. I figured he was messing with the new guy. Looking back, I wish that's all it had been. At first, nothing unusual happened. I cleaned the occupied floors, emptied trash cans, wiped down conference tables, vacuumed long rows of cubicles. Every night felt exactly the same. Then, about 2 weeks later, I was working on the 15th floor. It was around 1:30 in the morning. The entire building was silent. I remember because I'd just turned my vacuum off. That's when I heard it. Ring, ring, ring. An office phone. Not on my floor. Somewhere above me, it rang 4 or 5 times, then stopped. I didn't think much of it. Office phones do weird things. Wrong numbers. Automatic calls. System tests. The next night, it happened again. Same time. Same phone. Only this time, it rang much longer, almost a full minute. When it finally stopped, I remembered what the property manager had told me. If one of those office phones rings, don't answer it. Curiosity got the better of me. I took the service elevator up 1 floor. The 16th floor. One of the vacant offices. The lights were off. The glass doors were covered with brown paper from the inside. A thin layer of dust coated everything. Desks, chairs, reception counter. It looked like everyone had simply stood up one day and never come back. Then the phone rang again, loud enough to echo through the empty office. Ring, ring, ring. It was sitting on the receptionist's desk. An old beige office phone. The display was lit. No caller ID, just the words, incoming call. I stood there staring at it. It kept ringing. I knew I should walk away. Instead, I picked it up. Hello? For several seconds, nothing, not even static. Then, a man quietly said, "You aren't supposed to be up here." Click. The line went dead. I slowly placed the receiver back in its cradle. Every hair on my arm stood up. I convinced myself someone had hacked into the phone system. There had to be a logical explanation. Then, the phone rang again, immediately. Before I could even step away. Ring, ring. This time, the caller ID showed something different. Instead of saying incoming call, the screen displayed janitor's closet, floor 15. My stomach dropped. That was the phone mounted on the wall, next to my mop bucket. I hadn't been away from it for more than 3 minutes. There was no way. Anyone could have gone down there, dialed this phone, and gotten back upstairs without passing me. The ringing stopped. A second later, my radio crackled. The security guard. "You all right up there?" I answered. "Yeah, why?" He hesitated. I thought I saw you on camera." "What do you mean?" "I just watched somebody pushing a mop bucket into the service elevator. They looked exactly like you." The problem was, I was still standing alone on the 16th floor. You know, if security told me they had just watched someone who looked exactly like me, I'd probably quit before sunrise. Let's move on to the second story. This next story was posted by a security guard who worked nights in a 12-story office building in Atlanta. If you've ever worked security, you know the routine. Walk the halls, check the stairwells, watch the cameras, repeat. After a while, you stop paying attention to the little things. Until one of those little things refuses to make sense. Here's what he had to say. "I worked the overnight shift from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Most nights were unbelievably boring. I'd make my rounds every hour, lock doors, check mechanical rooms, then sit in the security office watching a wall of camera monitors. There were 32 cameras covering the building. Every entrance, every hallway, every elevator, every parking garage. By my second year, I knew every blind spot, every squeaky door, every strange noise the building made. Around 2:30 every morning, the cleaning crew took their lunch break for about 30 minutes. I was the only person in the building. That's when I usually noticed the elevators. Every now and then, one would leave the lobby, travel up several floors, then come back down. Nobody thought much of it. The maintenance company said the elevators occasionally recalibrated themselves overnight. Made sense to me until one Thursday morning. Camera 12 showed the lobby. A man walked through the revolving doors. Business suit, briefcase. Looked to be in his late 50s. He never looked toward the security desk, just walked straight to elevator 3. The doors opened. He stepped inside. The doors closed. I glanced at the elevator panel. He pressed floor 11. Nothing unusual, except there weren't any businesses on 11 anymore. That floor had been empty for almost a year while it was being renovated. I watched the elevator reach the 11th floor. The doors opened, then closed. The elevator stayed there. I waited for him to come back down. 5 minutes. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. Figuring maybe he'd gotten lost. I grabbed my radio and headed upstairs. When I stepped onto the 11th floor, the hallway was dark. Plastic sheeting hung over unfinished offices. Dust covered the concrete floor. The only footprints were mine. I searched every room, every conference area, every restroom, nothing, no briefcase, no man, nobody. Confused, I rode the elevator back down. The moment I sat in front of the monitors, my blood ran cold. Camera 12 showed the same man walking into the lobby. Again, same suit, same briefcase. Same pace, like the last 10 minutes had never happened. He stepped into elevator 3, pressed 11. The doors closed. I looked toward the actual lobby. It was empty. Nobody had just walked in. I looked back at the monitor. The elevator reached the 11th floor again. I sprinted to the control panel and pulled up the recording. The timestamp was live. Not old footage, not a replay. Live. Then, the image froze for half a second. When it came back, the man was gone. The elevator was empty. The doors opened, closed, and returned to the lobby by itself. I spent the rest of my shift reviewing every camera. Not once did I ever see that man leave the building. Seeing someone disappear from an elevator is unsettling enough, but watching it happen live, knowing you're the only one in the building, that's the kind of thing that stays with you. All right, we've got one final story. And this last one might be the strangest of them all. This last story was posted by an IT technician from Seattle. You know, when everyone else's computer stops working, IT is usually the last department to leave. Late-night software updates, server maintenance, emergency outages. Most of that work happens after the building empties out. That's exactly when this happened. Here's what he had to say. I worked for a software company that occupied the top 8 floors of a 30-story office tower. One Friday night, our file servers crashed. The rest of the IT team fixed the issue remotely. I volunteered to stay behind and restart a few network switches once the updates finished. By midnight, the building was practically empty. The receptionist had gone home. Cleaning crews had already finished. Even security had checked in with me before making their rounds. I was alone. Or so I thought. Around 1 in the morning, the lights flickered. Not unusual, the backup generators were running while electricians tested new equipment in the basement. A few seconds later, every computer monitor in the office went black, then came back on. Every single monitor displayed the same thing, not the company logo. Not Windows, just a security camera, black and white, showing an empty hallway. I assumed it was some kind of software glitch, until I noticed the hallway looked familiar. Gray carpet, glass offices, blue accent wall. It looked exactly like our building, only I didn't recognize the floor. The image remained for maybe 10 seconds. Then every monitor returned to normal. I shrugged it off, finished rebooting the equipment, packed my backpack, and headed toward the elevators. When the doors opened, there was already someone inside, an older woman, business attire, holding a cardboard file box. She smiled politely. "What floor?" I told her. She nodded, but instead of pressing my floor, she pressed 13. I didn't think much about it. The elevator started moving. Halfway down, it stopped. The doors opened onto the 13th floor. The hallway was dark. No lights, no signs, no furniture. Just a long corridor disappearing into darkness. The woman stepped out. Before the doors closed, she looked back at me and quietly said, "You should really lock your server room." Then she walked away. The doors shut. I stood there confused. Nobody rented the 13th floor. In fact, according to the directory in the lobby, there wasn't one. The building skipped from 12 to 14. I rode down to the lobby. The security guard looked up. "Everything okay?" I asked him. "Who works on 13? He stared at me. "There isn't a 13. I just stopped there." He shook his head. "No elevator in this building will stop on 13. It's disabled." I laughed. It literally just did. He pulled up the elevator log. Every stop made that night was recorded. Floor 28, floor 22, lobby. Nothing else. No record of floor 13. I told him about the woman carrying the file box. His expression changed immediately. Without saying a word, he walked over to a framed black and white photograph hanging behind the security desk. It showed office workers standing outside the building in the early 1980s. He pointed to one woman near the center, business suit, short hair, holding a cardboard file box. It was her. I asked who she was. He quietly replied, "Electrical fire. 1984. Started on the 13th floor during an overnight server upgrade. 5 employees never made it out." Then he looked back at me. "Every once in a while, someone working late says they meet a woman carrying a file box. They always tell me. She warns them about something." I asked him if anyone had ever followed her. He nodded once, then looked away. "None of them stayed employed here very long." He never explained what he meant, and I never asked. I packed up my desk the following week. I've worked in IT ever since. Just not in office towers, you know. Maybe it's just me. But I don't think I'll ever look at an empty office building the same way again. Thousands of people spend their entire day inside them. Then, by nightfall, the lights go out. The halls become silent, and for a few hours the building belongs to whoever, or whatever, is still there. If you enjoyed these stories, let me know which one got under your skin the most. And if you've ever worked late in an office building and experienced something you still can't explain, share it down in the comments. I'd love to read it. Who knows? It might end up in a future video. Until next time, keep the fires burning. And as always, I'll tell the stories. If you'll stay scared,